Hey, Composing Gloves here. I'm wearing a hat, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful sound. It is the massive wobble rips is what we're looking at. So I got a request to do some rips, and they sounded like, sort of like that. This was a reference track I was given. You can barely hear the rips. They're completely buried here. But there's a whole load of rips in here. I don't know, maybe over here. Nope. Oh, there we go. There's a good one. And so the person asking me this was like, hey, how do I make that rip? This is the Mount Eden dubstep, Sarah McLaughlin. Silence. Okay, so anyways, that's the reference track I was given. And so you're looking for sounds somewhat like this. I know I didn't nail those exact ones, but the ideas are very similar. And pretty much all the sounds like this, very old school sounds. As far as when these sorts of sounds were still sort of novel. Today, it's very easy to tell that these are massive. It's super easy to tell. Now, the way they mixed it and stuff is their own decision. That's like whatever. But for me, these are the ones I came up with, and they're all variations on the same patch. And they do a lot more rhythmic things. So let's go ahead and just look at one, and then we'll make one. So what the idea here is, for this particular one, there is some sort of an LFO movement going on. Now, if you don't know about this, Massive from the Ground Up, it's a series in my playlists on my YouTube channel. So you might want to go check that out if this is all, black magic voodoo to you. But I used an LFO. I kept it on the sine wave. You could experiment with different ones, but the sine wave sounded pretty much like what I wanted. And then I used a ratio of 1:8 with sync on. You may try experimenting with rate, but I used sync. And that's a lot of what they did. Now, some of those sounds were very similar, and you can accomplish a huge variety of sounds. Now, I attached this LFO to the filter movement, and you could try it on a bandpass filter. It would sound pretty cool, too. And you could also try it on, I chose the DAF filter. I'm using a frequency shifter to pick the exact frequency that I want. When we make the patch, I'll show you what this can sort of offer you. And then I have a parabolic shaper and a tube, tele tube. Also, I really like the tele tube. I like the sound of distortion. It's very particular to Massive. And then, of course, you could choose your waveform, and I'm using the amp to give it a really clean on-off. That is the amp. Make sure your amp volume's off so that when this reaches max, it's turning it on. Otherwise, if you do it the other way, it will be inversed, and it's just confusing, like what it's doing. That is the way you would expect it to do that thing. Now, you could come through and pick different waveforms. So these other two patches, that's Wobble 1. Wobble 2 has a similar deal, only it's got a second guy coming through, and it's on acid as a filter. And I changed the speed. Obviously, this is a 12, so it's a triple feel, so it's got a position of 12. And it's the same. It's literally, I just cloned the patch and made a couple adjustments. And then the third one, same deal. Now, on this one, the bandpass is the filter being used. That's my halftime. And then the notes, obviously, these are down 12. And then the notes I wrote on this guy, I have that really low thing and then this sort of higher guy. And now mine popped through the mix a little bit more. I would not be settled. The way they have it sort of buried right there, that's very old. It's not polished at all. It doesn't poke through the mix at all. Maybe that was the intentions, like something sort of down there, like in the gulps of the mix or whatever, But I chose to do this, and I tried to keep mine, kind of muddy too, but... So with everything all together, because I added some chords, and there is a separate sub. So this guy just sounds like this. And that's on my sound design with Harmer video 1. I show you how to make this patch. Just turn on the low pass filter, turn on the sub, and you're done. So, and it creates a sub for you. Now let's go ahead and make one. Oh, one more thing. I set these into FL, and I routed them to a sub mix where I distorted them again, and I EQ'd them just a smidge. But it's, that was just because whatever. But if I take those off, they still sound very, very similar. Now, of course, this is all very loud. And I just grabbed the drum loop. So the drum loop isn't even represented in my channel. It's going straight to the master. So there's all those things. And the fact that I have a limiter going like that, like I'm not going to change it now because that would drastically change things and I would have to mix it at that point. So I'm just going to avoid that for now. So, okay, let's add a new thing and we'll name it, you know, Massive Wobbles. And now we need to add massive. And oh, if you're wondering what this guy was, I actually don't remember what it was. Oh, I remember what this was. I was trying to figure out why it wasn't making noise, and then I realized after I had saved it as a preset that I just didn't have this on. Sometimes you get duped by things like that. Okay, so let's go F8, hit F8 to load this up, type in massive and hit enter. Mine has this as a default. I did that for a tutorial. I should really change it back to the default patch. But anyways, go new sound. Now you're going to notice these sounds are pretty easy to make. So what you do is you want to create a wobble, right? So we already know we're going to need an LFO, and we're going to use the LFO on the amplifier to give us a really clean on, off, on, off, on, off. The filter won't do it for you. The filter is merely to create a sequential motion that matches our volume shape. So I'll have more bite and grit as it moves. So we're going to go ahead and settle on the daft filter. The scream filter is good for sort of high resonance, lasery type sounds. But for here, the daft filter will serve us pretty well. And we're going to go ahead and add a 5 and just put a little bit on. You will have something like this. It sounds like wow, wow. I'm going to change the resonance down. It makes it a little less, wow, wow, wow type. I'm going to turn this up. Maybe not too much. Distortion, we'll put it up later. I'm going to put it into filter 1 completely, and I'm going to leave it in parallel. No, I'll put it in serial. Put it in serial. And we're just going to be using one oscillator. Now, to get the real effect of this, we're also going to, while we're sound designing, we're going to put a LFO, 5 LFO on the amplifier. And you see how much cleaner that is? That's going to be a lot more easy to tell rhythmically what's going on. Now, the daft filter, where you set the cutoff, is going to really determine a lot. So might have a little bit and have it like up there or whatever. Now we're going to be playing low notes. If you hold down Alt and drag down, it'll drag you down an octave. So that's pretty cool right where that's at. And so now we need to add the aggressive edge. So there are 2 ways you can do this. So first one is I'm going to turn on insert 1. Make sure that your insert is in the channel path that you currently have. So go to your routing tab. Insert 1's here. We're going to be using insert 2, which is in the channel, which is in the filter 2 path, which as you can see right now is got nothing going to it. So we're going to need to put it over here. And we'll just do that now. Now it's reaching through our filter 1 and it'll be in our path later on for insert 2. So, okay, cool. And we're going to leave our feedback where it's at. We may or may not touch the feedback depending on if it's aggressive enough. So the first one we're going to use is the frequency shifter. The frequency shifter is really cool. I'm going to leave that right where it's at. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the pitch knob to pick a spot to emphasize. You'll hear its effects. It's quite the touchy knob. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some distortion later on down our chain, and that will give the moves here a lot more meaning. So we're going to add we could add a hard clipper, but I like the parabolic shaper. It's a little less hard, if that makes sense. It's not so, it doesn't sound like a hard clipper. So anyways, wow, that was profound. It sounds like that. And you see that? That's a part of our frequency shifter. We don't want that. It sounds gross and messy. Okay, so we're just gonna stop there. You could finagle with that all day. Next up, we're gonna add one. Now here you have classic tube, tele-tube, and Bronner tube, and you want to use your first FX slot for this because in the second one they're not there. And some people like the dimensional expander. It's basically just like a fancy pan. So that's like a stereo width type deal. But they gave it a dimensional expander name because maybe it's doing something with dimensions, like, oh, theoretically this and that. Maybe that was it. Maybe they were just being buzzwordy. I don't know. But it's okay. It does add a rather noticeable delay depending on the size of your room. So you want to be careful with it. But anyways, or the size that you set at. See, size, you want to be careful about that. Here, we want our sound to be tight. So first, let's just mess with each one and just show you the differences. So I'm going to turn it all the way on. So that's our classic. That's our telly and our Bronner. And you notice the Bronner is not quite as bright. It's a little more tame. Or it's not as it's bright. The mid range has been affected more than that upper end. So I like the telly, but you can see it sounds pretty similar to classic. There are rather noticeable differences if you just sit here and become familiar with them, because they are subtle, but they make big changes to their overall timbre, especially if you're going to be sending this into further processing, which we are going to be doing. Now, on our LFO, we're going to set it up to a sync, and then, so you click on the LFO, go to sync, and then we're going to go to 8 as our first one. And so now we're going to sort of mess with our frequency shift and see if we can't get something that's a little more... Let's mess with our filter now, see if what we can accomplish there. That's pretty okay. Now let's mess with the feedback. I don't like the feedback. It adds a ringing. So next we're going to try messing with the ring mod. This could go south, but we'll see. Actually, I think that's pretty cool. And so you just go around, you sort of add things, layer things. You may consider messing with the modulation pitch, because that will make a huge difference. Go check out my video on this if you're really curious about it inside that series I mentioned. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to leave that there. And okay. And next we're going to add some EQ and just bring up the high shelf. That's pretty great. Now, the part of getting these sounds to sound big is how you mix it later. So we're going to ignore the mixing for now. We're going to shift click and name it Wobble. Whoa, man. Wobble 1 or whatever. I already have a Wobble 1, but now we've got 2 Wobble 1s. And next we're going to hit Control L, send it to a mixer track. We're going to move it way over here. So there we go. We're going to send it to the piano roll. And we're just going to replace that other one that I have here. So we replace, we're going to put our new one, which is, of course, going to be better, of course. And now we're going to clone it. So we're going to hit Alt-C to clone it. Now we have a similar patch. We're going to take this. We're going to leave it as a full measure. This one, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our LFO. We're going to turn it to 12. So you see we got that effect. We're going to change the filter to a acid filter. So you get a little bit of a different bite. And now you can go through and maybe just select a different waveform. That sounds pretty cool. And next, I'm going to be a little fancy and add an envelope to it and have an attack be longer. So it will go through this attack and then it will decay and then sustain it whatever it's at. I don't think I'll hold the note long enough to have it go through all these stages anyways. So now you have a little more movement. It breathes a little bit more. And next, we're going to add in our second note. So we're going to go... And then we'll go to the fifth. Fifth always sounds good. Maybe we'll go up instead. You know what? This should be like this. I'm double clicking on the ghost notes to switch between channels like that. This low stuff's not a great idea. We'll go up there. And then finally, we'll hit Alt-C one more time. So Alt-C, it clones our channel and Wobble 1 number 3. And now we are going to change things again. So on this one, we'll leave the same thing. We'll pick a different waveform. Why not? That one sounds kind of cool. We'll add in a second one, and we're also going to do the same LFO movement. If we don't, it will sound very muddy. So we'll do that. That sounds kind of cool. The wavetable position can make a big difference on some of these. We'll move it down down an octave as well. And now we'll change the filter, maybe to like a bandpass filter or something. We'll bring it in. We're going to take the resonance out. Because if you have it up, you can hear that ringing. See, so anyways, we don't want that. It was kind of subtle. So if you're not used to making moves, you might not notice things like that ringing immediately. But it will pop out eventually. We'll leave the ring mod on. What the heck? Sounds kind of cool. And we'll mess with the frequency shift. See what kind of timbres we can get out this time around. This time we'll go with a different tube. Why not? So cool, that sounds kind of neat. You could, of course, filter to taste. You may consider, in parallel, turning on filter 2 and maybe just filtering out some of that stuff. Maybe use a high pass or just a sec. Let me think about my mix. Got to make sure that that's at middle for that to work. We'll do low pass. Just clean up our sound a little bit. So that's just going to be a stagnant filter. Now, we can also EQ this a bit different too. And this one is going to be our double time. So we're going to move it up to 16. And now, right click, add one more note. If it will give me to the piano roll. There you go. And then we'll just repeat that twice. And of course, you get way more creative with the rhythms and the textures. You can spend more time doing this. Now, something that is kind of a cool option. So we're going to select these three. We're going to go to a mixer track. We'll start it on 25 because we're already there, and hit Control-Shift-L. And we'll put our wobbles starting with the one we have selected there. So if you had moved the wobble 1 down, it would put it in the wrong track. So you want to make sure that when you select it here, that's the one you also correspondingly have selected here, so that it will start on the one you think. Anyways, if that didn't make any sense, you need to go watch my workflow videos on the mixer and the FL workflows. So, okay, we have that. We're going to be a little bit fancy here, and we're going to create a submix. So we're going to hold those down, hold Control and click, and it just routed them all to that one. And we're going to name this one our Wobble Submix. Cool. And next up, we're going to create a group. So just right click, create group, and we're just going to name it the Wobbles. Now we have a group, very organized, same color. How great is that? Next, we're going to add a bit of distortion to it. Nothing crazy, just some basic distortion. And we are going to also add an EQ, but you know what? I kind of like the way it is, so we'll just leave it the way it is. Now let's talk about some cool timbral things you can do here that are additional options. So something that's really cool is a delay. So you could add a delay onto this. Let's go with a simpler delay. You don't need a big fancy one for this. Just a simple delay. Something that can reach the Haas effect area of your hearing. If you don't know what that is, that's the point. The Haas effect, basically, once it reaches past 30 milliseconds, something like that, you begin to perceive it as two separate sounds, like bum 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 bum. But if it's too fast, and this is extended up to like 80 milliseconds for non-transient, like pad tones, and very very close, it could be up to like 20 or something for very 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 transient, like clicks are much easier to detect. Basically, at the point where the amount of time it takes for you to perceive them as two separate hits. So we're going to use this to our advantage because it creates some cool comb filtering effects. So right now I've got my time up to 001. I have it up to 01. And the cutoff's all the way up. That's fine, whatever. We could turn our feedback up. This is the feedback coming into here. I believe I have a video on this in my FL12 effects, but it's just a delay plug. So with this, without it on, it sounds like this. And with it on, so you see you get that sort of a texture. It's a metallic-y comb filter type texture. We could filter the feedback signal back out. And so we could have that be frequency specific. Now you can only do a cutoff you can only do a high cut. You know, it doesn't say high cut here. It's just sort of implied. It's so strange how that's what I expected to do, and that's what it does. But that sounds kind of cool. And next we could try moving this slightly because again, we don't want it to be too big, because if it gets too big, we will hear it as a separate hit. We want it to be a timbral change. So you can hold down Control to get fine adjustment. So that's 4. These are quite, as you can see, quite dramatic differences. Let's do 2. I like 1 the most. That's just the way I like it. Offset does other stuff. We're not going to get too crazy with this. So now it really pops. It's sort of a popping sound, has a cool texture to it. You know that other, that da 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 da. We're going to send this guy, before we send him here, we're going to send him there. And then it'll get routed into here. Oh, you know what? I didn't like that at all. Let's go back out. We need to customize him. So we're going to add it. It's his own delay. Actually, you can do the same thing with reverb because it works on the same sort of principle. Really, really slow decay time, 0.1 of a second or 100 milliseconds. And we're going to take the wet down. Now, this is decay time. It's not the actual delay. So don't get confused. Now, the wet is the long reflections. The is the early reflection. So we're going to use the and then we have a few more controls so we can sort of get a little more specific in different ways than the other plug. So with our reverb plug, let's do it. So you hear it sort of like everywhere right now. So let's take the high cut and low cut off, and no diffusion. We'll mix it with the drive. We'll bring the diffusion up a bit. And so without it, it adds just a weird space to it. So you can hear it on the sides, the outer edges of your earphones, your headphones. So interesting. So yeah, and that's sort of the idea. And then there are some other cool plugs in here. I'm trying to stay with FL stock stuff. Let's add another let's do a Maximus and change the bring up the high. We're just expanding it, and that's what you got. So I also have some bandpass chords here. Oh yes, and so what notes are we messing with? We're messing with C9, I guess, if we're being really particular about it. We're in the C major scale, so we're gonna use minor chords, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna do some unusual voicing. We're gonna do C, E flat, and then A. Not A, we want G. Ooh, where do we want that G? We'll put it down. No, we want the G up here. And then here we go G, so we'll go to E minor. So B, G, and then B. Well, we want an E somewhere in there too. We'll put the E, because I want this movement right here is stepwise. It'll sound nice. So we'll put the E up here too. Why not? Another stepwise motion, a stagnant motion. That's good voice leading right there. But this is, no, wait. I'm not going to think about 4-part writing right now. I was just checking. We have B to G, which is fine. And we have E, B to E, which is also fine. I believe we're fine. That'll be interesting. And we could probably change this. So. We could even add in, I got a cool idea. We could add in, whoops, I didn't want that. Replace it with a harmor. And then we'll add a square, unison, bring down the pitch variation, da 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 da. Yes, yes, and We'll bring this up. That's sort of what I want. Okay, so, and then we'll do something like this. Oh, you know what? Instead of bringing it up an octave, we'll should leave it where it was. Boop. And it'd be interesting if we brought down the harmonics. Nah, that's what I wanted. Okay, cool. So we'll do, and then we'll do. Even lower. We'll clone it. Then we'll do E. Move this, and then move this, and then. Maybe it'll sound better high. Who knows? Something that'd be kind of cool is maybe if we had this, but only as just a hint of it. So one way we could do that is if we put a fruity reverb on it. And then we put it on side mode. So it'll only process the side signal. We take the dry out. And so now we'll only get the reverberantness of the thing, only the side signal. So it'll be completely out of the way of our crazy basses in the middle. And then we could use our kick and sidechain it, but then I'd have to extract the kick, and that's, well, I'm not going to do that here. But anyways, we got a pretty cool sounding sort of thingamajig. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe, support me on Patreon, because that's what all the cool people are doing. And have a blessed day. So just showing you sort of what I was going after. I was listening to this first bit a lot. Now mine's a bit bigger. I would need to thin it out more. I could probably get at it more with EQ.